Well, hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I've been getting quite a bit of questions over the last few weeks about sort of how we ended 2022. So we thought it might be helpful to do a quick admin update and give you a recap of 2022 and how we sort of ended up. I think most of the time when people are asking that question, they're asking one of two questions. One, sort of financially, how did we do? Were we in an okay place? And then the second question people tend to also still wonder about is, have we bounced back from COVID? And I think to both of those, I would say yes and yes and. Financially speaking, we ended the year, I think it was like $124 to the good, which is a pretty remarkable thing, I think, for two reasons. One, our total budget is $1.46 million, which is maybe not that big of a number to you in your world, but it feels like a huge number to me and mine. And to have to have come like $100 within that, I just feels kind of crazy. And at the beginning of the year, we anticipated having to spend quite a bit, like up to $200,000 out of our cash reserves in order just to get through the year, because there were a lot of question marks at the beginning of the year. And so to have gotten to the end of it where we did is this is an incredible testament to the generosity of our church and to the generosity of God. So I'd say yes, we're in a good position there. And to the second question, are we back? I'd say yes and. I mean, it really feels like there's something is afoot, right? There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of momentum around here. We're seeing folks show up, folks coming back, first time in a long time, new folks joining us, and finding ways to like connect and get engaged and serve and do like beautiful mission. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be a part of this church community. So I'll do some more finance numbers in just a second. But I want to like hang out in the what's afoot category for a little bit because there are some numbers behind the numbers that I think not everybody would see. So I thought it might be fun to kind of help y'all see some of the things on the back end, like the aggregate stuff when everything gets put all together to celebrate. And I'd like to do that really in two different categories. The first is I heard a pastor one time say that Methodism has two beautiful hands. One is kind of personal piety. So like, what's our relationship with God like? How are we growing in grace? Are we growing in our faith? And then the other is our social holiness. Like, how are we loving our neighbor? How are we serving in our community? So I'd like to celebrate kind of both of those beautiful hands. We'll do the kind of missions side of thing first, right? That social holiness. The first is sort of as we name that, what was last year by the numbers. We spent both out of our budget and out of restricted giving. So this is like if somebody donated something to the church specifically for Main Street Kitchen or something like that, and then we spent that money through our church, the budget and restricted giving. We gave away as a church over $135,000 in missional giving. We also donated a ton of like building use. We donated 287,000 square feet, almost 2,500 hours worth of time we donated in our building, right? And that's there's a cost of that to us, but this is a missional gift, right? I think if we were to try to put a dollar amount on that, our estimate is about $20,000. So we're really looking at like $150,000 that went out of our congregation, which is about 10% of our total budget, right, for the year, that 1.46 million we were talking about. If you add to that our apportioned giving, this is the giving that is kind of our portion of the mission ministry of our collective denomination, much of which is direct into mission and ministry, some of which is into helping new churches, be born, to supporting kind of the agencies of the church that make lots of good ministry happen. So I consider that missional giving as well. By the time you add all that in, we're just over $310,000 if you add all those numbers together. And that is a big number. That is a big number for a church like ours. And I think it's worth celebrating. But it's not just a financial reality, right? The missions team made a goal of getting twice as many people this year serving as there were last year, and they hit that goal. We had just over 1,600 people inside and outside of our church participated in our 25 ministries for outreach, justice, and mercy. And those folks served just shy of 15,000 people in our church and our community. So I think it's just a lot to celebrate there. In addition, I will just let you know that our missions team is kind of in a season of evaluating going forward. And one of the questions that they're really asking is not what do we think other people need, but like, let's go and figure out how we can come alongside, how we can serve one another, how we can serve with one another in our community. I think in some really healthy and beautiful ways they're asking that question. So much to celebrate there. Now, to the other hand, right? So this, the word I will use here is engagement. Are folks who are participating in the life of our church, are they engaging, right? Are they engaging in meaningful ministries that are helping them grow in grace, helping them grow in their faith? This is the kind of are we back from COVID yet question, and my answer is yes. And so again, here's just some things to celebrate. We had a total of 90 people join our family, our church family last year, through confirmation, through professions of faith, through transfers. We had 24 baptisms. All that I think is super exciting. Our average worship attendance by the end of the year was 974, which feels good and strong and is on the rise, is growing. Of that, about 550 was in person on average, and about 400 on average was online. And I think it's helpful to remember that sometimes we think of, like, if you were saying like, well, what are your worship services? Well, we have worship at 9, 10, and 11:15. And we're thinking oftentimes when we say that of our 3 in-person worship services, we also have the venue, which is our online only worship service every Sunday. And then we've got folks that are worshiping live online at 10 and 11:15. And we have like a whole worship service full of folks who are worshiping where they are all throughout the week. And it's not something that we're used to thinking of when we think of a worship service, but it is absolutely happening. Some of you know it's happening because you're doing it. And I think, again, that's worthy of celebrating. We'll come back to some of that in just one second. Are folks not just worshiping, but are they connecting in the life of our church? We had over 600 children and youth active in all sorts of different formation groups, whether that's Sunday school or Sunday afternoon programming. That's nursery all the way up through high school. And we had over 200 adults that were participating in their own way, in their own groups and studies. We have added what we're calling Core 4, which is sort of an attempt to put 4 key tools into the tool belt of everyone to kind of own their own life of faith. We launched Core 1 and Core 2 this year. Our Forks and Fellowships groups in the summer have been going super strong. Like I'm watching relationships happen. I'm watching community be built. I'm watching folks have spiritual breakthrough. It's just been a really exciting thing to watch in that regard as well. I would add to that, we have expanded our hospitality offerings, trying to encourage people to linger a little longer on Sunday mornings when they're here and around. And beautiful community has been cultivated in those places. And we've got lots of great stuff happening there. Our preschool continues to be not just a place where we're serving our community, but where we're helping our youngest disciples be shaped and formed. I tell you one great story that I heard, and I always hear so many wonderful stories coming out of our preschool. This one's a little bit older. This is a church family, a family in our church who is now a part of our church family. And their child was in preschool here, and they had been trying to find a place to land. They were actively looking for a church. They had kind of been worshiping in this one place, but they didn't feel super settled about it. And their preschooler said, I don't want to go to any of these other churches anymore. I want y'all to come to my church, and invited them to come to Fuquay-Varina United Methodist Church. And they did. And now they're here, and they're actively engaged and serving and committed in so many different ways, and in leadership. I don't know. It's fun. Their preschooler led them here. Our preschool is back up and running this year, full bore, and just lots to celebrate there. So I do want to just pull one thing out and highlight it real quick. And this goes back to the online versus in-person worship thing, and things that I think we're all still trying to learn, including me, is I have noticed a real shift that seems to be different in my experience of what church is like compared to pre-COVID, which is that when folks show up, they probably have worshiped with us several times online. Maybe you're one of these folks. I feel like I'm talking about you behind your back, but people that show up, like, they're ready to be committed. They're ready to plug in. They're ready to serve. They're ready to grow. They're ready to get involved, invested, and connected in all sorts of different ways. And I just think it's really important for us to name that. I think that's something worthy of celebrating. It also is incumbent upon those of us who already consider this church family to be ours, whether we've been here for, a month or for 38 years. Like, it's our responsibility not just to assume that anyone who's coming through our doors online or in person, like may or may not come back. These folks, they're ready to connect and plug in. Like we can engage people, we can help them find their way, we can be good guides and good stewards of their time and energy. And I think that's worth us paying attention to as we go forward. All right, I promised we would come back to some finance things here at the end and talk about kind of where we're headed in the new year a bit. So here I'll come back to just some financing numbers for those of you nuts and bolts people who like to know these things. Again, last year, somehow we ended the year right like basically in the middle, just even. Making that possible, there are a couple of things worthy of our celebration. The first is this. We had 52 new families who participated in giving in 22. And I think that that's a wonderful thing to celebrate. We also, we tend to think about giving just for our own budgeting standpoint in terms of like two general categories. One we call pledged giving. That's giving that folks have sort of said like, this is my estimate of giving for next year. They've made a commitment that this is probably what they're going to be able to do. And then there's non-pledged giving, which is folks who say like, I can't make a commitment, but I'll participate. I just don't know what that'll look like. And we have to make different assumptions about those two different kind of categories, right? In 22, for our pledged giving, right? Those who made commitments or estimates of what they're giving, we had what's a pledge fulfillment rate of over 100%. I don't hear of that. That is not a number that I hear my colleagues and friends at other churches talking. That is an incredible gift to our church. It is a great example of just how faithful and how generous our folks are. And I think much to be celebrated there. Last year, really starting kind of after Easter, we saw this slow and steady increase of lots of different folks who weren't able to make a commitment early really begin to participate. We've seen that trend continue even into January of 2023. And this is just a reminder that like it takes us 1.46 million to have a 2022. Like that's what it took for our church family to operate together. And none of that money is outside money. There are a couple dollars here, there. Most of that comes like 99% of it comes from folks within our church family. We had 487 households participated in making that possible last year. But this is just a reminder that it takes all of us, no matter how big or how small or how consequential or inconsequential we feel like our gift would be. Like it takes all of us doing that together to make the mission and ministry of our church possible. And so I say all this to celebrate, but also just to encourage us to remember that it takes all of us. As we head off into the new year, you may have heard that we started some visioning work. And I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. The visioning team has met twice. This is a group that our church council has put together specifically for this task. And again, there will continue to be opportunities for feedback and input. But we've already started to kind of use some of the feedback that we got at the end of 22 from our congregation. I'll say before I dive into that all of this kind of visioning conversations have been made possible by a memorial gift that someone gave. A memorial gift at their death, like through their estate, they made this gift possible. And they made this gift possible for the health and the life of the church that is ahead of us. And as a people who regularly recognize the beauty of death and resurrection sitting side by side, I think we can celebrate the beauty of that gift. That even in death, this member of our family, this member of our church was making new life for our church possible, which I think is a beautiful thing. The feedback that we've heard that's very consistent is that our church believes that we do have and should continue to have a strong focus on community outreach, discipleship for all ages, that even as we change and grow, we don't want to lose the family feeling that we share together. And we strongly identify being good neighbors and generous neighbors and helping people in our community grow in their faith as like the core of who we are together. There's also a really interesting sort of thread that kind of ran through many of the open-ended answers that we're going to continue to evaluate, really challenging our church to more fully reflect our community. And I think there's lots of work and interpretive work to be done around that by the team. And so they really are excited about that. I want to end by talking about Easter because it's coming up. And also because in many, many conversations I have, lots of folks go back to last Easter of 22. It was really like our church took an enormous breath of fresh air family, community just sort of exploded out the doors of the church, past the fountain and into the front yard. It felt like a huge family reunion. I know not everybody is, quote unquote back, or they're still in different phases of coming back or feeling safe, post COVID. But since Easter of last year, it feels like when those doors opened and people flooded out and didn't want to leave and were eating donuts and hula hooping or taking pictures of like whatever folks were doing on the front lawn. It just feels like the Spirit of God just like continues to kind of like push those doors open and pushes us out onto the front lawn. And it feels like the rest of 22 and even into the beginning parts of 23 have been that. And so as we come around to Easter of 23 again, I just want to celebrate the work of the Spirit in and through our church, bearing witness in generosity, bearing witness in our kind of great, gracious outpouring of generosity towards our community and mission and ministry, celebrating the work of the Spirit in engaging people, captivating the hearts and minds of folks, stirring in them, something kindling in them the fire of the Holy Spirit to want to invest in a relationship with God, invest in a relationship with each other. And it just feels like good things are afoot. So thank you all for being a part of that. And if you're looking for ways to participate more fully, we'd always love to help you figure out what that's like. But we have much to be thankful for, much to celebrate. And so I end just with a word of gratitude to the God who provides life and provides it abundantly. Thank you guys for hanging around. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to follow up.